heard a lot from the Conservative leader. We've heard a lot from the Prime Minister. It's giving us a better idea of how, relative to each other, they are positioning themselves and their parties. I want to bring back the front bench to talk a bit more about how we can expect that to unfold over the fall. We've got Marco Mendicino, James Moore, Rona Ambrose, and Christy Clark here. Marco, I'll start with you. And I wanted to ask from the Liberals, from what you anticipate the Liberals' vantage point is, how significant do they think this fall the contrast between themselves and the Conservatives will be, and how you think they will frame it?
Well, I think it will be significant in several respects. First, on the economy, as we've discussed, continuing to show the pace and acceleration of getting big things done, whether it's building projects that are in the national interest, and really showcasing Canada as an energy superpower in an increasingly destabilized and multipolar trading world. But second, some of the other issues that we haven't yet discussed, but need to see progress on when it comes to building housing. Madame Joly was out earlier today talking about unveiling a new strategy when it comes to the defense manufacturing sector. So those are important substantive contrasts. But I think the other issues that where there will be contrast is in the areas of immigration and as well in law and order. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Pierre Poilievre was in Mississauga, where, in the 905, we saw some of those seats swing blue because he was tapping into law and order. So I do think that the Liberal government is going to have to come out with a very robust messaging that speaks to Canadians' concerns when it comes to law and order, that works with other levels of government, both provincially and municipally, so that people who are committing crimes are being held responsible.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch, in particular, James, over the past week or so, the degree to which the Conservatives are talking about crime and the contrast, certainly, that they are saying exists between themselves and the Liberals. And we've had provincial politicians, even Doug Ford, who's not exactly like best friends with Pierre Poilievre-led Conservatives, criticizing the Liberals, which he hasn't done a lot of, but he is on this issue. How important do you think crime, for example, will be for the Conservatives in their own efforts to paint a contrast with the Liberals?
Well, I think the lived experience by most Canadians is that the weakness of the Canadian economy, especially with youth unemployment, the massive inflows, the unsustainable levels of inflows of immigration that we've had over the past decade, all of these things are combining to create an environment where crime is also running rampant. And then you add into that the fentanyl crisis, the drug crisis, and the social policies, frankly, that we've gotten wrong for a really long time. All of this has created a stew of a sense of disorder, discomfort, a lack of sort of real positivity about where the country is going, and a lack of optimism, especially amongst young Canadians. So these things are all they feed off of each other in a downward spiral that we've been on for far too long. And so I think we need to sort of approach these things, I think, bit by bit. I think, if we're all going to be demanding solidarity and sort of working together cooperatively to manage the tariff consequences of Donald Trump's approach to Canada and the world, that's fine. But we need to have aggressive, clear, precise, and effective debates about all of the other issues, because they all feed off each other. And so far, they've been feeding off each other in a really negative way. With regard to immigration in particular and crime in particular, there's real reason why Pierre Poilievre is talking about these issues, is because Canadians are talking about these issues, and they want to see Parliament talking about these issues. And they want to see really aggressive solutions come forward in a thoughtful way. And we're long past the time that we actually talk about these things. And hopefully a fresh Parliament and a fresh mandate for the Prime Minister, and Pierre Poilievre re-energized after his by-election victory, will create a moment where we can actually tackle some things, because we have some breathing room, certainly over the next calendar year, to do some really important stuff and not just, focus on Donald Trump incessantly.
Yeah, if we set aside sort of the issue of Donald Trump, which I think, we can everyone, including parliamentarians, Christy, can do multiple things at once. We can focus on that and think about other things as well, because Canadians are doing that largely. What is your view on, I guess, the implications for both the Conservatives in the way in which they talk about these issues? Because they did so to a degree very successfully during the campaign, but not enough to win the election. And what is the implication, in your view, for the Liberals, who largely left a vacuum for a long time on issues around crime and immigration in certain aspects?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any doubt that the immigration policies under the previous government didn't work. They didn't end up the way that anybody'd hoped that they would. They put huge amount of pressure on the housing market, which has had a really deleterious impact for Canadians. But there's also no doubt that this government's policy is going to be different on those issues. But first, I just want to talk about this temporary foreign workers issue, because it was funny hearing Pierre Poilievre talk about TFWs rather than immigration broadly, because if you've ever visited a small business anywhere in the country, they will tell you that they want more temporary foreign workers, especially in economies that are doing really well. So I'm not sure it's exactly the right target for Mr. Poilievre, who likes to suggest that he's the small business, pro-business candidate. However, I think immigration, the federal government is going to take immigration on. They are going to cut back on the immigration numbers. They're going to do it, I think, hopefully carefully, because there are elements in immigration that we absolutely need to preserve because we need those workers. The other thing, though, I would say, listening to James talk, and he talks positively about working together in the coming years and how, recognizing that there's an existential crisis. I will just finish by adding, I sure wish we could hear some of that kind of Team Canada positive thought about working together in this existential crisis from the leader of the opposition himself, Pierre Poilievre. I mean, when you talk about shaping their messaging, he doesn't sound like he has changed one bit from the way he was during the election, and that is the reason he lost the election. If he expects if he wants to ever be prime minister, I would suggest he wants to start thinking about how he can get on the team.
Rana, I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more important than having an accountability in Parliament and a government that's being held to account. And that's exactly what a good opposition and a strong opposition leader does. And they focus on the things that matter the most to Canadians. I know Prime Minister Carney said when he talks to businesses, they tell him that they want temporary foreign workers. I was in government. We tried to cut for a period of time, we cut the temporary foreign worker program. The truth is, the economy is in a much worse place today, and where temporary foreign workers are being accessed is in places in Canada where there's high unemployment. So this idea that it's the only people in Fort McMurray where there's lots, low unemployment and demand, and you can't find anybody to work at Tim Hortons, you need a temporary foreign worker. That's not what's happening. That temporary foreign worker program, small businesses have become used to it and they've become addicted to it. It is easier for them to fill out those forms and get a temporary foreign worker for their, for their business than it is to get out there in the community and advertise their job to youth, advertise to high schools, advertise to universities. It's just easier, and it's become a program that they are addicted to a certain extent. There's no way that we should have small businesses using the temporary foreign worker program in cities and towns where there's massive youth unemployment. Don't tell me that at Tim Hortons or any of these food chains where young people could work can't get out and find a young university student that's willing to come work for $38 an hour. So look, there's places where it makes sense, where there's low unemployment and there's demand, and you just can't find anyone to work because of the pressure in the economy.
Right.
And we see places like that in Alberta. But that's not where it's being used exclusively. So I think Pierre has tapped into something here really important. I also think immigration is top of mind for people across the country. And I think that people are starting to relate, like James said, the immigration issue with housing, with education. There's not enough schools. They're relating it to the capacity of the healthcare system and seeing it unravel. People are saying we raised our immigration numbers and we didn't have the capacity to absorb people, and now we need to catch up. So we need to cap those numbers. We've got to catch up. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the services. And people are feeling strained. And so I think Pierre is absolutely on the right track. And if the Liberals don't address these issues in the budget or signal that they're going to address them, they're not hearing what Canadians are talking about.
They have made some signals. Marco, I'll give you the last word here if you wanted to respond. Made some signals, but certainly, haven't gone as far as the Conservatives' recommendation to abolish certain programs. You mentioned crime as a particular issue to look ahead to. Do you think immigration will be as significant?
I do. And look, again, I think that there are elements of Rana's intervention that I agree with. But even in what she said, I mean, she's talking about degrees to which the temporary foreign worker program can be recalibrated. So, look, I think Pierre has tapped into something. He's tapped into something that is probably profoundly felt by a number of people who are concerned about the way in which we integrate newcomers, which is a bit of a departure from the longstanding tradition that immigration has enjoyed bipartisan support because it has been, in the long run, a net, positive contributor to the economy. And just given our domestic population and our demographics and the need to uphold things like universal health care, our pensions, other important, covenants, we do need immigration. The reforms, I think, are important. And again, this is another area where the government has put forward, I think, some very concrete recommendations. And certainly at a top line, lowering temporary immigration will be an objective. And I think at the same time, really focusing on how we can employ more young Canadians in emerging technological sectors like artificial intelligence and upskilling and equipping them with the skills that they need so that they can compete for the jobs that will pay well, that will give them access to that affordable housing that also needs to be built. Those are the positive objectives that I think that the government is going to try to contrast with Pierre Poilievre as opposed to his more negative message.